Hello everyone, and after a sad hog week, I think it's time we shift focus to another animal. An animal by the name of Hammond, who kinda came out of nowhere as a very likely candidate for a new hero. And I would wager to say that it is this guy, and he is a chimpanzee, which would match the few, like teasy alluding to descriptions that we have of him. It would also fit the size profile, and a, super genetically amped chimpanzee would kind of be the yang to Winston's yin. Especially if it turns out that Hammond was the one that led the Planet of the Apes. Why did I go Jamaican for that one? Now I really imagine Caesar in Planet of the Apes when he first said, "No!" If it was like, "No man, get your hands off of me." I should cut this out, actually. I really should. Jesus Christ. So imagine if Hammond was the one that led the rising of the specimens on the horizon, obviously much to the, sadness of Winston. That would instantly give them a very much rivalry, especially if Hammond was responsible for Winston losing Winston, the human Winston. And imagine if Hammond had kind of like an obsession with Winston. Maybe not obsession, but maybe they were actually good species friends. And he ultimately kind of wants Winston back in a way, to the point that maybe he would go after him. Because what if Hammond has also already left the colony? That's why he's on the missing list. What if the missing spacesuit isn't an indicator that Winston the human got out, but a much sadder twist that the chimpanzee Hammond, which could fit into a human-sized spacesuit, actually stole Winston's spacesuit and eventually went after Winston the monkey, goddamn them having the same name, and followed him back to Earth. So instead of Winston being happy that maybe Winston survived, Winston instead finds out that it's not Winston that survived, but Winston's spacesuit used by Hammond, and he has a kind of moment. Seriously, the names. But how cool would that be as why am I speaking thusly? How cool would that be as a dynamic for a story? How often in games do you have childhood friends twixt gorilla and chimpanzee? They grow up both being genetically modified. One of them ends up befriending the humans and learning the virtues of working together. The other, not so much. They turn into a bitter rivalry, saddened by their previous friendship, unable to agree with the others. Hang on a minute. It's literally Professor X and Magneto if they were fucking monkeys. Phrasing there, actually. But you get me, right? That kind of relationship. One of them isn't necessarily cartoonishly evil like Reaper, but, he does have his extreme methods of doing something. I think that would be a great little storyline to toy around with. And honestly, on Gibraltar, you do end up seeing that there is a Winston-shaped spacesuit. Now, if this is the one that Winston used to actually escape with, then that implies he was very much a adult-sized gorilla when he did escape. Hell, as an aside for a little bit more of a concrete lore fact, Winston does have voice line,
"I wonder what's happened here since I escaped."
So I think it's very safe to say that the takeover happened when he was maybe younger, and he obviously couldn't really do much to resist it, and kind of grew up alongside the now running the place specimens while planning his escape from an early age, hence the drawings you can find around the place, and then escaped when he was an adult in his adult-sized gorilla spacesuit. So it's actually kind of a sad, traumatic backstory. You grow up raised by a human, you come to love, gain the sentience and emotional understanding of a human, maybe even past that, only to see these people get completely, at best imprisoned, probably murdered, by your fellow apes, and then not be able to do anything about it and have to desperately escape. Well, that's kind of dark. The thing is, All of this is heavy speculatory speculation. It really is, because there's not a lot of tangible to go on. We have Hammond, we know that he is missing, given the kind of importance to suggest that he is important somehow, maybe not new hero, but is important, and is likely an animal species from the moon. That's the only concrete fact, so everything else is just fun musings, and normally I don't like to go crazy on fun, well, I do like to fun muse all the time, but you know what I'm saying, I like to have some evidence to back stuff up, and I wasn't initially going to do this video, but something kind of convinced it to, and it was a really cool fan-made hero idea for Hammond, and it kind of plays into something that I think is just a wonderful, ridiculously crazy theory that probably isn't going to happen, but if it did, it would be both hilarious and such an awesome curveball, and that is, what if Hammond is Doomfist? Right? Like, we wanted the next hero to be Doomfist. This Hammond is being hinted at. What if he followed Winston to Earth, somehow landed in Numbani, and stole the fucking Doomfist to wage war on Earth's humans? So you have a chimpanzee toting the Doomfist gauntlet. It's stupid. I mean, there's not that many connections, and we're gonna go over the design by this very, very talented individual, but I do think that it's kind of cool. Right? Like, out of every outlandish Overwatch theory, the idea that Doomfist might turn out to be a chimpanzee and long-lost childhood rival to Winston, I mean, that's kind of cool, right? So, like we did originally back when I talked about Doomfist, I kind of want to go over some ideas that I would like as abilities. I want you guys to chip in how you would design a character like that, and then obviously I'll read all the comments, and you guys have some great suggestions, and I think it's just a wonderful discussion to have, because even if none of this comes true, us just having a these would be cool moves on a character like this in Overwatch discussion is so awesome, because it really helps us get to feel for the game even deeper and really understand what works well in this world, and I think that is a fantastic thing. So if we have a small chimpanzee hero with the gauntlet, the actual gauntlet move would be his ultimate, you know, a big smashy thing, whatever. I've talked about big smashy Doomfisty moves and how they're a problem in another video, so let's talk about things specifically related to him being a chimp. Now, it constantly alludes to him scuttling around vents and being a difficult individual to catch, so we have to give him mobility, right? But therein lies an initial problem. There's not that many forms of mobility left in the game that would be completely unique. You end up start to feeling like you just have to have a modified version of someone else's. If he can jump really well, it just kind of feels like Genji. If he can climb walls, then, you know, it's like Hanzo. If he has equipment, then it's like a Winston jetpack. So, what I'm thinking, and this is the crazy outlandish one before I go for one that would actually be pretty cool, what if, because he's small in the whole ventilation scuttling thing, what if there was areas on maps that only him and other small characters like Tracer could fit through? Obviously this isn't going to happen, but I think it's a fun thing to think about, because it would require a redesign of the maps to have these small backdoor little flanking routes, but that would be kinda neat, right? If he was an assault hero that could actually go through vents to flank people. I think there's some really merit in exploring that space. But more accurately, what I would want to see is if he was holding the gauntlet of Doomfist, then I would say he would be strong enough to just, like, palm his fingers into a wall and kind of crush into it and create his own handhold. That, coupled with a chimpanzee's agility, what if Chimpanzee Fist, is what we're going to call him, what if his mobility was that he can literally walk on walls and ceilings like they're floors? Like, you walk up to a wall and then you just start going up it, and then you can stop, you can hang against the wall, you can hang against the ceiling, kind of like they're coming out of the walls alien style, like you're going through a tunnel and you'd look up and then Chimpanzee Fist is just staring at you from on top of the ceiling, drops down and smashes your face in. Wouldn't that be awesome? And a totally unique type of mobility. Maybe have you can only be walking on wall / ceiling for 10 seconds before needing to touch the ground again and falling off. Whatever. But the idea of someone who can comfortably hang from a wall or a ceiling and crawl across it a little bit, that's kind of cool, especially for a small, mobile, tricksy character. Really forces you to look up all the time, which notoriously is psychologically something gamers don't do. It's one of the hardest game design challenges game developers have, is getting players to look up, because humans just naturally don't. It's a very curious phenomenon. So adding a character like this that forces you to look up not only would be cool for the, uniqueness sake, it also would let Blizzard design spaces where there is cool stuff to see when you look up, because you're checking for that character anyway, and it kind of actually shows off that aspect, the verticality of the map. So I think there's got a lot of cool compoundiness that can go on there, and that's my main deal with him. I think that would be really cool. In terms of the rest of his kit, I mean, you could kind of go with anything, right? You could have a defensive gadget, you could have a bit of burst movement, he could obviously have some lesser fist-based melee abilities, but I think that form of mobility is really the key core concept. So you're going to get Doomfist smashed out of nowhere from the ceiling. That would be hilarious. So, let's actually go over this fan-created thing that kind of sparked me to think about all of this and even start this video. So, this thing is pretty damn cool. Meet Gorilla Fist. I mean, I already love the image of him. I really, really do. And the logic behind this is, look, there is friend, big monkey, small monkey. So, Winston and Hammond. Yeah! And then we get the inspiration design for the spacesuit. And the thing is, if you do look through the telescope on the map, you can see possible landing locations. And one of them is kind of at the top of Africa. So maybe if he thought that's where Winston went, aimed for it, and then kind of missed by heavily going south, he could be the thing that crashed into Numbani and then saw what was happening, heard the rumors about Doomfist, and then stole it. It's not gonna happen. Look, it's not gonna happen. But it's really good banana-y fun to think about. It really, really is. So he ends up stealing it, and then we get Chimpanzee Fist here. And the actual suggested moves that he has are really, really quite cool. And he wants to go for a stealing ammo type deal. So he forces someone to reload and then maybe slows their attack speed. And this, I don't think, is good enough. I really don't, because it would be kind of irritating, yeah, but So I would suggest he ends up being kind of reverse Sombra, not hacking moves, but if he steals your ammunition, then you just literally can't left click, you can't use your weapon's fire modes for an amount of time. You can use your abilities, but just not fire your weapon for a while. I think that would be a nice way to have him pickpocket, and that kind of makes sense, because obviously, as a chimpanzee, you see loads of videos of them stealing stuff. I think that kind of fits thematically in with the character. Then you just got general punchy and doomfisty stuff, but that one I do think is very, very nice. So yeah, I just saw this and I was like, that's really, really cool. I think that's really well made, and if something can get me thinking like that, then that is something I really, really appreciate. I mean, his name is Barack Sinar. I'll leave a link to it in the description. Obviously, all credit to him for this. It's very well made, and he deserves to have his work shown out here. But yeah, in terms of likeliness, not very. In terms of fun to think about, that would be kind of cool. Yeah, definitely on that side of things. I think there's a lot of potential for a cool character dynamic here, and just a cool character in general, because tiny animal is something that we never really would have expected to get in Overwatch. So yeah, here's hoping that I personally really want to see Hammond actually turn out to be a small sentient animal hero. I just think that would be really cool. Whatever form that takes, I think it would be awesome to add that kind of diversity to the game, because it's just not a thing you see all the time, really, is it? So what do you guys think, alright? And all this outlandish, ridiculous. This has got to be one of the least backed up with actual theory research possible I've done, because there just isn't anything, but I'd say it's also one of the best imagine if this happened potentials out of everything I've talked about, and I'd love to get your guys' opinion. How would you design a small chimp intelligent hero in Overwatch, and how would you react if it turned out to be Hammond Fist? I mean, seriously. Like you've enjoyed this, subscribe for more, and I will see you next time. Oh, goodbye.